Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burnettwork. I am your host, Artin, and we have with us today Kat. Kat, how are you?
Very good. Thanks.
Guys, Catherine and I are going to be looking at the Bafta Award winners. This is the 2024 wrap up where we're going to be looking at who's won all these categories. It's been such an interesting award season, Catherine. I don't remember an award season quite like this where we see so many different winners all across the board. Very few people have, or very few movies and productions have not at least gotten some kind of award this year. And I kind of like it a little bit more spread out like this. It is really interesting. And I can't wait to discuss who the winners are with you, Catherine. We're going to start off with the first award that has to do with outstanding British film. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this one. Of course, I'm assuming that it has to originate in the UK. There was a number of awards, films that were on that list.
Yeah,
That
10 of them.
I'm sorry.
10 of them.
Yeah, there's a lot, including Wonka. I see Poor Things. Napoleon is down there as outstanding British film. Um, and How to Have Sex, which was another film that was got a lot of attention. But the winner is Zone of Interest, a film that you and I were just talking about the other day, Catherine.
Yeah, kind of an art film. I don't think. I haven't seen all the other. I'm looking at the list of the other films nominated. All of Us Strangers, The Old Oak, Rye Lane, Scrapper. I don't know what those are. I saw Saltburn. Uh, okay, Wonky. So I'm not sure which one. Since I haven't seen most of those films, I can't speak to whether or not the right film won. But like we mentioned, Zone of Interest. It's like, okay, it's an interesting art film, but I think it would have been much stronger as a short film.
Yeah, I agree. And certainly, looking at those lists of films, some of them I didn't know were British films. I guess I could have gone ahead and figured out that they obviously were. But I had absolutely no idea, Catherine, that so many on this list are considered British films. And certainly, some of the major contenders, you and I talked about Zone of Interest just a few days ago. And I'm quite surprised to see that that film has won for outstanding British film. Honestly, I'm just really shocked by it. Even looking at this list, I'm not quite sure. I think that Poor Things should have gotten the win on this one. What do you think, Catherine?
Well, like I said, I haven't seen or even heard of like 5 of those movies, so I can't say it one way or another. Only that I probably would have picked Poor Things over Zone of Interest, but even then, I thought Poor Things is an interesting art film. Best Picture, I don't know about that. So I don't know. I haven't seen enough of those movies. This is kind of odd, separate category where for some reason, if it's by a British production company or whatever, we'll honor it. Kind of like the outstanding debut by a British writer, director, producer. It's like, okay. Um, yeah, I guess. Again, I wouldn't have given it, but I haven't seen all the others. So
Hmm.
for that
Yeah,
particular category.
it's a really long list. And, certainly there's probably about four on there that I haven't seen. But to be honest with you, Catherine, I am very surprised with the Zone of Interest win. But once again, Zone of Interest is a film that's been nominated for Best Oscar. And, only we can only guess as to how that field will turn out if, when it comes the time that we will be looking at the results for the Oscars. Perhaps Zone of Interest is a bigger contender than I thought. Even so, I have to be honest with you, I am somewhat surprised by the result. However, I am congratulating them on this win. Certainly, a lot of hard work went into that. So good, good for them for Zone of Interest for outstanding British film. Now, another as we continue down the list, I have to stop sharing because I don't want anybody to see the next category that I'd like to talk about has to do with best visual effects, Catherine. Some of the films that were nominated include The Creator. I did see that film and I did like the visual effects. Catherine, did you see The Creator?
Yeah, that's got to be hands down some of the best VFX because that whole budget was only $80 million. And I don't know how that carves up either way, but the visual effects in that movie were stunning. Like, it didn't look like CGI. It looked very real, like as photoreal as you can get. I thought that one would be a shoo-in for a nomination easily or a win.
Absolutely. Another film nominated on the list was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Certainly a film that I did see. I enjoyed it. I don't know whether it needed to be nominated in this category, but I did enjoy that version of Guardians of the Galaxy. I felt like it was somewhat more shocking, less entertaining film, but I enjoyed it. Did you see Guardians of the Galaxy 3?
Yeah, I liked it, and the visual effects were good, much better rendering and stuff than on other Marvel films lately. So I could see why that got a nomination for effects.
Yeah, and Mission Impossible, along with Napoleon and Poor Things, all three were nominated for visual effects. Certainly, Napoleon. Just to be honest with you, I wasn't necessarily that impressed with the visual effects in Napoleon. That's just my opinion. I'm not saying that the film wasn't well made, but it didn't grab me the way I hoped the film would have. What
I
about you,
think that's also because I recall that Ridley only got like 200 extras, so I think it was probably and because they filmed the whole thing in Malta, I think that it was probably a lot of set extensions and landscape extensions and things. So in a way, it's stuff that you don't even realize are visual effects, and people aren't really kind of like the visual effects artist will tell you that if you don't know it's a visual effect, that means you've done the best job possible. But do the voters really pay attention to that? Because it's not a movie you watch and necessarily think, oh, there's visual effects here, even though there are.
Mhm. And we both agree that Poor Things had incredible visual effects, some things that I've never even seen before, but have seen maybe even in video games or in, like science fiction,
Yeah.
fantasy films that were remarkable, not just the design, but also the colors and the textures, Catherine. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was, but it also was very obvious that it was effects and animated, and I get that's part of the like what they're deliberately trying to do, which is why I wouldn't say pick that one. I would still pick the creator in that category. Like another one I'm surprised he got nominated was Mission Impossible because much of the climax you could tell that things were CG'd in, like when they replaced the big jump that he rides the motorcycle off of with a rock promontory, and you could tell it's like really fake CG, or a lot of times they're on top of the train, and every time they have to avoid the girders that fly by, you could tell that's CG. And it's like why it almost feels like they're nominating certain things because they need to fill the roster on the category. But Poor Things, they did look very impressive because they're trying to go for this very dreamlike, almost like we mentioned before, almost like a puppet play type quality to it. But I still would have picked the creator out of that list but that's just me.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting comment, Catherine, because what I really think is interesting regarding that is how beautiful the creator came out when it comes down to it. It certainly did have such a lovely, lovely presentation. And a lot of times, that lovely presentation makes a huge difference when you're viewing the film in believability, especially for something like the creator, where you needed to believe that these creatures, these artificial intelligence creatures, were significant enough to say that they had to win you over to their side. And I think they did that with the creator. It was almost elegant as far as I'm concerned in the aesthetic that they presented it. So as far as I'm concerned, I was sure, or at least thought that perhaps the creator would win, but it was not to be, Catherine, because Poor Things was the winner for best special visual effects. Um, what did you think of that win?
Like I said, I would have given it to the creator easily. It's like, yeah, Poor Things, it's good, but it's like it's also they're deliberately trying to make it feel weird, and that what they're adding to it. Whereas like visual effects where you can't tell in its effect, or like with the creator where it's so real, it's like that what you're looking at can't be real, but it's so photo real that you could like reach out and touch it. I'm like, that was stunning, and to do that on such a cheap budget was just jaw dropping. That should have won easily.
Yeah, and I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson for being here, moderator, collaborator, and good friend. We are all good people. Tom, you putting in the hours today. I says hello and welcome to PGS Moving Image BAFTA's live wrap up party. Please do click the like and subscribe when you get a chance. And thank you so much, Tom, for being so wonderful. We are all goof people. Continuing on this list, Catherine, is best sound. Now, certainly there were going to be a lot of films nominated here. You and I've covered quite a few of the movies on the list for best sound, including Oppenheimer, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, Maestro, and Ferrari. We've covered all of those and Zone of Interest. What, in your opinion, stood out for any of those films, why they should win Best Sound?
Well, I'll tell you one that didn't stand out, and that was Maestro, because standard biopic, like, okay, so it's music. I mean, nothing about that really jumped me. Oppenheimer admittedly had some interesting type of a few instances of interesting sound, but the two that stand out most to me are Ferrari and the Zone of Interest. Because Ferrari, it's just the soundtrack is amazing, especially with those cars. Like even when he's describing how the engine, like if you shape the engine contours like this is how it's going to sound. And then when they cut to the scene where you're actually seeing that, the sound was incredible in that film, especially in like the crash scenes and stuff. But Zone of Interest also, I think the sound there really helps set the mood for the movie and be really off-putting, and not just in sound effects like the the screams of the gunfire, but like we mentioned before, the weird sound effects they would have that wasn't exactly music but would just be really off-putting. And to me that really would be the standout, would be for me the Zone of Interest.
Yeah, you make a good point about that. Certainly, that's something to think about. And the chilling, scary scenes in Zone of Interest were some, very unexpected in some points. Although we knew that could be a recreation or a possibility, it still came across as very jarring and shocking. And I think if that's what they were trying to achieve, they certainly did it and Zone of Interest. And Zone of Interest did come out as the winner for Best Sound. Johnny Byrne and Tarn Willers uh, getting Best Sound for Zone of Interest. Certainly a well deserved win as far as I'm concerned in both in that category. Um, Now, this is very interesting, Catherine, because talking about best production design, and we've seen some stellar production design movies this season. Certainly Barbie, a film that was nominated, had spectacular production design, but we also had Oppenheimer, which also was very impressive, and Zone of Interest was another nominee. Killers of the Flower Moon and Poor Things, all of these films had a very unique aesthetic. Which one of those was your favorite production design?
Probably Poor Things, because I mean, Killers of the Flower Moon, we know they'd had a lot of like albums that they could get, like photo albums they could source from for the visuals to make it look very accurate. Same with the Zone of Interest, like we mentioned in our review, that was a spot on, pristine recreation of that. Whereas Oppenheimer, okay, it's a period piece, so okay, I mean, it wasn't exactly mind blowing. It's it's kind of what you expect, and then but Poor Things. I mean, Barbie. Okay, it's unique because it's pink, and there's so much pink everywhere. But other than that, it's like okay, a few weird designed houses, but for the most part, it's just a bunch of pink everywhere. But the two that really stand out would be Poor Things, and or the one that stands out, or I should say, is Poor Things. Because yeah, when you're the two historical ones, or the three historical ones, Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Zone of Interest, those all did a good job. But Poor Things was just stunning, because that was just, that whole movie is built around just the zany production design of it, from the way the black and white London looks, almost a little hints of German expressionism in the first 20 minutes or so, and then when they go on the boat ride, and how some of the backgrounds are deliberately look like animated matte paintings, are made to deliberately look weird or put off. And you look at the big wide shots of the boat sailing, and you can see how the sky is kind of domed, like they're in like a curve. It is so bizarre, but it really accentuates everything about that movie and the whole weirdness of her seeing this world for the first time. And that was just really great job. That's my favorite pick for production.
Yeah, I agree. As much as I loved seeing Barbie recreated, it did not have the same level of creativity as Poor Things had. Poor Things certainly what they weren't just copying something that we've seen a million times. It was true artistic creation and inspiration using numerous types of textures and design elements, lighting, it looked quite real, Catherine, from the surreal to fantasy to the extreme, and it coordinated especially with the costumes, which is something that was spectacular. It came off as being absolutely brilliant, guys. Poor Things won the best production design. Not a surprise there. Anybody who has not seen Poor Things, you've seen the trailer. The film is even more impressive when you see what they've done. And Catherine, a lot of lighting techniques that I've never seen before are in Poor Things. Honestly, Catherine, I think not only did they use everything that's in the book of what to do, but they had fun experimenting and giving us a proper show when it comes to being able to express what they wanted you to see in this film. It truly was a masterpiece when it came to production design. So I think that that is a well-deserved win for the guys in Poor Things. It went to Shona Heath, James Price, and Suzusa Mahalik. Really outdid themselves. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it, to be honest with you, Catherine, in regards to live action. So it was absolutely stunning and beautiful.
Very well deserved.
Yes, not something I can say about every film out there. Um, let's talk about best original score. Um, and I think that there have been a number of films in our lifetime that we know we have our favorites. Out of the list, I'm kind of surprised they had an animated feature, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, animated for best original score. Also, Saltburn. Poor Things, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Oppenheimer. Um, Out of all those films, it's very interesting when I think about it. Um, did you have a favorite out of those? I've seen all of those films. I don't know if you saw. You said Saltburn might have been one that you didn't see. Did you
And
see?
I saw it. I of those five, Oppenheimer was my favorite score. It's the one that's memorable. I can even play the tune in my head right now as I'm doing. Saltburn, I saw it at the end of November. I honestly don't remember the music. Across the Spider-Verse, I remember they had a lot of songs in that movie, and the music was good, and it was definitely accentuating for a lot of the action scenes. So the music there is pretty good, well-deserved nomination. Uh, Killers of the Flower Moon, I remember that soundtrack was also, I think, one of my favorites behind Oppenheimer. That would be my second pick. That was a really good, memorable kind of soundtrack. But between of those nominated, even Poor Things had a bit of a zany soundtrack, but the one that did it for me that I thought was the best was Oppenheimer by Ludwig Göransson. That was really good.
Yeah, and you know what I think is interesting is that I can't remember the score for Poor Things. Visually, I can't ever forget Poor Things. I'll never
Right.
forget that film. It's visually stunning. And I think that also the acting was scintillating, but I can't say I don't remember what the score sounds like. I think that might um say something a little bit about the way that it was arranged. Certainly it doesn't mean it's bad, everybody. I'm not saying that. But Oppenheimer, as you said, Catherine, you're humming it in your mind and you can remember it. It's quite fresh. Um Oppenheimer ended up being the winner for best original score, and not a surprise because Oppenheimer's the person who did the score for Oppenheimer is Ludwig Göransson, one of my favorite composers. He did The Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
Right, Catherine?
Yeah, that was another really memorable score. I'm now humming that one in my head. He's got memorable. Like if this guy keeps this up, he could go on for decades to be the next John Williams. I mean, he's got these memorable scores that he just comes up with, and that's the thing. Like with John Williams, you could, even if you don't remember the movie, you could remember the tune and just start humming them in your head. That's a sign of a good, memorable score. And I think the score for Oppenheimer really works, especially when because of all the cross cutting in that movie and how the music is really accentuating that. And so that was a really well deserved award there.
Yeah, and it is very interesting. From the original score in The Mandalorian, at least, we saw so many parodies where people would take the tune and create words to this score that didn't actually have any words to it, but it inspired people playing on their, on their violins, and we saw all sorts of interpretations of the Mandalorian uh score. So not a surprise here that he would win for Oppenheimer. Certainly a memorable score, and not surprising that he did so well with it. The next category is best makeup and hair. I think that's very interesting here when you think about makeup and hair. And I don't think there's one of those for the Oscars, but I'm fine
There
with
is
that.
makeup and hairstyling.
Oh, is there?
Of course.
Why don't I remember this? Um well, I'm glad that you're reminding me. I can't for some reason. I don't Oh, maybe because it's not televised. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not
Yeah,
entirely sure.
yeah, because the BAFTAs you need to have a VPN to access via stream BBC Play or something like that if you want to watch it.
Yes. And once again, we have a repeat of many of the same films we know: Oppenheimer, Napoleon Maestro, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Poor Things. Certainly, all, I'd say six of these films, one, two, three, four, five of these films have very unique look. Neither of them are anything like the other. Um, Maybe Oppenheimer overlaps a little bit with Maestro, but they do feel quite different and have such a different tone. Personally, if I had to choose between all of those, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go with Poor Things. I think that film was so outrageous, so glamorous when it comes to everything that was in it, that I would pick that film. There was a lot of emphasis on appearance in this film of all the characters, regardless of how they looked. There was incredible emphasis, especially on the Willem Dafoe's character, Catherine. I can't forget that face. Can you?
No, that's why it was either going to be that one film or Maestro, because what they did with Maestro was really stunning with the age makeup as well. But not only does Poor Things have the same makeup matched with the Willem Dafoe character, but it also has all the other wild hairstyles and makeup for all the other zany characters throughout the movie that Maestro doesn't have. So I would think that Poor Things would be the winner, clear-cut winner there amongst all the nominees.
Absolutely, and incidentally, Poor Things is the winner for the best makeup and hair category. Not a surprise. It must have been a lot of work. The lead actress, whether that's her real hair or not, that was a lot of work with that amount of hair, Catherine. It was huge. And she sported that look for quite some time in the film. She was quite active while wearing her hair out in this way. There were scenes where kind of, it flowed in a certain way, and then there were also more complicated hairstyles for that time period where women wore their hair up and wore a lot of hair pieces. Some of the makeup had to be more expressive than other makeup, and I think they did a beautiful job. I'm still marveling over that Willem Dafoe makeup in that character. It was just unbelievable what he looked like. And not only that, some of the cadavers, I almost wondered, there are cadavers in this film. There's individuals, or let's say when they're creating their creations, all of that all need makeup. It's just unbelievable what was done in this film, and I'm so happy to see that they got the award for best hair and makeup. Now for best editing, whoo, oh my goodness, once again,
It's a great category.
it is a great category. Some of the most incredible films like Oppenheimer, Anatomy of a Fall, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, and Zone of Interest were all nominated. And this was one of those categories, Catherine, where I have to be honest with you. Once again, two films that stars the same lady, Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest, were both nominated for Best Editing. And certainly, it does give them some credit, for that. But I think when I look at that category, I personally think that Oppenheimer had the best editing. It was an incredibly complex film when it comes to looking at the different stages in the film, and the way that they were trying to portray things. Of course, based on the book, but certainly there was a lot of material that had to be gone through, and also it had to be edited so it made sense. So sometimes some of this editing may not necessarily have been in order. The events may not have been in order. But when you compare it, the only other thing that I think would be somewhat close to it uh might be Killers of the Flower Moon. I thought the editing in that looked great. I thought that, a lot of the scenes we saw with Robert De Niro um and Leonardo DiCaprio were beautiful. And we had some great sequences in there. although I didn't care for the end, but I think they could have possibly won in this category. Did you have a pick for best editing?
Well, looking at those nominees, the ones I didn't think had a shot would be Zone of Interest because that's again like we talked about loosely connected scenes or whatever. So it's like, Poor Things. That had a very deliberate, slower pace, and it was like, I felt the visuals were almost directing the movie more than the editing was. Killers of the Flower Moon was also paced very well, but it did feel almost like the movie's starting over again when the BOI agent shows up, and then once, like you mentioned with the ending, it's like you can become more aware of the edit as you're getting into that part of the film. Oppenheimer is the standout because you keep jumping across to these three different storylines and three different time periods, and it's keeping you engaged consistently so that it doesn't feel like there's a natural place to hit the pause button. And even after the Trinity test sequence is a success, you would think almost like that's a climactic moment because that's kind of what this whole middle storyline has been building towards. But it keeps on going for like another 40 minutes or 45 minutes, but it does so in a manner that still keeps you enraptured in it. Like it doesn't have to reel you back in. You're constantly keeping engaged with it, the way they're bouncing back and forth, especially matching up certain dialogue between separate scenes. The editing on that was incredible. So that would be an easy slam dunk for me for Oppenheimer.
Yeah, and certainly I think that you make a good point. Oppenheimer did win for best editing at the BAFTAs. Certainly there was a lot going on with it. And I think some of the editing heights and achievements for me, um, obviously, is always going to be the detonation scene. It's always going to be, as far as I'm concerned, such an important editing scene. They had to get that one just right, Catherine. I think there was a lot of technical consideration for that. There was a lot of perspective for that. This we're watching Oppenheimer himself from the side, looking through the viewfinder, and then we kind of see different things and hear different things. There's a lot that could have gone wrong with that, but I also think that there are some editing scenes while he's being interrogated that were incredibly important to get right. The scene where the wife is, unfortunately everybody finds out about the affairs, and her devastation in that scene was a very technically challenging scene in the sense of how the director wanted to show the character literally on top of, Oppenheimer at that point. He made that decision. Wasn't easy to do that, but he accomplished that, and other things in the film that I was amazed by. I actually was amazed by the swinging between Robert Downey Jr., and his side. Let's say if you can follow, versus Oppenheimer. Sometimes you're kind of like listening to one side versus the other. Malik comes out and says, "Hey, well, something, I don't think this is fair." The editing and the way that you get these different opinions, and they're trying to sway you on one side or the other. I loved how it was done, regardless of who you believed. It was done beautifully, and they certainly did deserve the win here for the editing. Of course, that was by Hoyt van Hoytema. It's done a bunch of other movies that I can't remember, but I'm thinking Ad Astra, her, Tinker Tailor.
He did cinematography, not editing.
I apologize.
Jennifer Lame was the editor on Oppenheimer.
Sorry, guys. Jennifer Lame, who also did work on Manchester by the Sea, Tenet, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. Thank you so much, Catherine, for letting me know. I was on the wrong section there, but kudos to Jennifer for doing such a beautiful job and making the film look so amazing. And our next category, Catherine, is best costume design. Now, even before, I knew who I was picking for.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a slam dunk for Poor Things. It's not even a debate at this point.
Yeah, this is definitely, and it did go to Poor Things. I absolutely was so, and am still so amazed by what they've done with the costumes in Poor Things. They're stunning, they're beautiful. And as I said before, it's amazing how she's walking around. I guess maybe about a fourth of the film where she doesn't necessarily have a full skirt on, and yet she's got those leg of mutton sleeves, those exaggerated leg of mutton sleeves, incredible portions and pieces So even when you have characters that don't have full costumes on, if you will, or they have, their legs are exposed or their arms exposed, we can see incredibly well thought out and balanced examples of design that can be done beautifully, regardless of how, let's say, this character who was eccentric chose to wear it like that. It was amazing looking. And as I said, the visuals, including this costume design in Poor Things, I will never forget. Did you have a favorite one, Catherine?
Well, Poor Things, but I'm not sure if I had a favorite outfit specifically. It's just that, like, again, the whole visuals of that movie and the things are so outrageous and different. Whereas the other nominees, it's like, yeah, Barbie's accurately recreating the outfits from a lot of the dolls because they make a point of literally mentioning, oh, this is the outfit from this doll, this doll. It's like, okay, they're good, but they're not like out of this world stuff. Whereas the other three historical dramas, Zone of Interest, Oppenheimer, and Killers of the Flower Moon, it's like, okay, they're accurate to the time, but which is why they're going to get nominations. But Poor Things is just so out there because it even takes things which would be historically accurate for that time period, but then puts other spins on it to make it even weirder, to complement, again, the bizarreness of the effects and the bizarreness of the sets. And so everything is just so just out of this world that it's like, oh, of course it's going to go to Poor Things.
Absolutely, Catherine. I couldn't have said that any better. As I told you, I kept, every time I saw a leg of mutton sleeve, they were different. They had different textures. They had different weights. They had different shapes. It was amazing. And that's just the sleeves, just the colors and the textures, materials. This must have taken so long to design, but the vision here was pretty clear. This was just the best of the best when it comes to costume design, and Poor Things for the win there. Now, the next category, I almost feel like I gave it away because I was looking one level up, but we're talking about best cinematography. And I have to say that as far as I'm concerned, um, looking at the nominees, Zone of Interest, I can understand why they were nominated for best
Oh yeah, it was
cinematography.
really good. That was really good cinematography. The choice of camera angles and the way they're it was really well done.
Yeah, and of course, we have our other nominees for cinematography, which include Poor Things,
A lot of fisheye lenses in that one that really stand out to, again, add to the overt weirdness of it.
Maestro. I don't think Maestro deserved that
I think the black and
nomination.
white photography in that was very good, and I think that's probably what the standout is. The rest of it was, okay, but the black and white was pretty good. Matthew Libatique, yeah, he's a good DP.
And Killers of the Flower Moon was also nominated along with Oppenheimer. And I feel like I gave it away because I had mentioned Hoyt van Hoytema's name as the winner for best cinematography already. So I apologize, guys. But Catherine, what did you think about the winner? Do you think Oppenheimer deserved the best cinematography as well?
Yeah, so they shot it on film, and it's the the pristineness of film, like the argument of film versus digital. It's like, yeah, some movies, like simple comedies, rom-coms, or action movies, you don't need to shoot. You can shoot them digitally, doesn't matter. But certain films you watch, you want it to have that really luscious cinematography, and Oppenheimer really has that. And it's also the first film in history to be shot on black and white IMAX film, which they invented for this movie. That's never been done before. That's innovative. That's something you're rewarding right there, and it looks really stand out. The only other movie which actually isn't on the list, which I probably would have put, was Saltburn, because I think that had really luscious cinematography as well. But Oppenheimer, again, it's just really, you're looking at that and it's like, wow, that is just really stunning to see that, because it's just so pristine. Like, it feels like you reach out and just touch like the bomb or touch the character, and it just, because of just how real it is, not in a crappy video way, but in a pristine 4K IMAX type of way. And again, the shot compositions are very well done, especially in the scenes where he's getting grilled on the Senate, where you'll notice that it starts out kind of like a wide shot and it gets narrower and narrower as it keeps going in, as they're emphasizing how uneasy he's getting. And like, those types of decisions I really love. I think they did a really great job with that. And so that's another argument why you should keep shooting movies on film and keep film celluloid alive. And the fact that, again, you're inventing a brand new type of film for the movie, which has never been done before. Again, that's another win. So very well deserving, very, very well done.
Yeah, and Hoyt van Hoytema, as I was saying before, and I apologize, guys. I was saying, he obviously also did the cinematography for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Her, Spectre, Ad Astra, and many more, certainly did a fantastic job there. And Catherine, as I said, you and I have spoken about this before. Oppenheimer is still being shown, and people are still buying tickets to this almost 3 hour film that people can't seem to get enough of. And as I'm sure you agree, Oppenheimer is going to be, out of all the films on this list, all the nominees, Oppenheimer is the one film I guarantee you is going to be shown in classrooms. It's going to be shown in schools. It's going to have quite a long life, I think, historically as well. A very unique film, and a very special film as well. So let's look at best casting. The best casting nominees for the BAFTAs here. We have the first nominee is Killers of the Flower Moon. I definitely have to say that Killers of the Flower Moon, the casting was fantastic. As far as I'm concerned, as I've told you before, Catherine, I would love to see De Niro and obviously the other two, I can't, of course, I know DiCaprio. Um, I want to see all three of them in more movies. I want to see them in Westerns. I want to see them in all of those things. But also, How to Have Sex was nominated, Anatomy of a Fall, All of Us Strangers, and The Holdovers. All very interesting. I also loved The Holdovers cast. Um, if I had to choose, I probably would choose Killers of the Flower Moon. What about you, Catherine, for the films that you've
Uh,
seen?
well, I haven't seen All of Us Strangers or How to Have Sex, so I can't speak to those two. Killers of the Flower Moon is pretty good casting, but The Holdovers also, because you're casting a brand new unknown who's never acted in anything before for one of your two leads to play against against Paul Giamatti, which is, again, that's not an easy task. And then Divine Joy, I think she's been in a few other things before. I hadn't heard of her before that movie, so that was, again, those three characters. That casting is really essential. But also Killers of the Flower Moon, it's like, okay, you got Robert De Niro, you got Leo DiCaprio, and then Lily Gladstone. That's good too. So either of those two, Killers of the Flower Moon or Holdovers. That's right, I blanked on the name for a second. But even Oppenheimer, which is not in the category, that was another one which had an outstanding cast. I'm surprised that's not on the list. So because that would be a cast I would probably give it to if that was nominated, but it's not. So I would probably say The Holdovers, because that movie, again, is hinging on a complete unknown who's never acted before. Because if that doesn't work, then your whole movie is going to fall apart and doesn't work. Whereas with Killers of the Flower Moon, yeah, you're getting the best when you go out to get the best. So between those, I would pick The Holdovers.
Yeah, and The Holdovers are the winners of the best casting award. So congratulations to The Holdovers, and obviously to the casting agent, Susan Shopmaker, there for that particular film. I think that also, when looking at The Holdovers, as you said, having to play alongside Paul Giamatti and being unknown, it's hard. He had a lot of time with Paul, and Paul certainly didn't back down in performance, so he had to match that. I think he did such a great job there. It was a great balance, and I think it's going to be an American classic. The Holdovers, as you and I had said before, we used to get a lot of films that were like The Holdovers, and now getting something again like that, it feels like things are coming back. But what a great film that was, The Holdovers. So for those of you who may not have seen The Holdovers, I sure hope that you do get a chance to check that out. Now, let's go ahead and look at the next category. Best film not in the English language.
I
Ooh.
think that's also the best way to word that category. If they should carry that over to the Oscars, because they keep going back and forth on the Oscars whether it should be called a foreign film or an international film, and how that kind of gets lost in the weeds because the Academy is an international organization. So I think they should just rename that category the same: best film not in the English language for the Oscars as well.
Yeah,
Like
and I have not seen all of the films that are in this category. Sadly, the nominees are Society of the Snow, and that was on Netflix. I think it was a
yeah,
remake.
I no longer have a Netflix account, but looking at the nominees, I think that I'm surprised that didn't get it, assuming that it's like fans and critics seem to love that movie, 91%. But I'm also surprised that there's a documentary nominated in this category, 20 Days in Maripol. So I'm like, oh, that's surprising. They allow a crossover between documentary and non-documentary, which was interesting. Uh, but I haven't seen that. And then you and I, of course, reviewed Past Lives and Anatomy of a Fall, and both agreed probably no. In terms, I don't think you would have picked either of those two either. But and then of course we have the Zone of Interest as the last nominee. So
Exactly, Catherine, and I agree with you. Certainly, I was surprised Anatomy of a Fall is even in this list at all, and Past Lives. Very surprising that they're on these boards. I agree. I think Society of the Snow probably should have won. You're right. There were a lot of accolades about it. We've seen a lot of versions of this story that's been made since 1972 when this unfortunate disaster took place. But people are saying that this is one of the best versions that we've ever seen. We've even seen an English language version of this, right, Catherine? Made from this 1972 terrible disaster. But I'm really curious now to watch it, since it was nominated, and certainly even the name is a little haunting. But the winner of best film not in the English language was Zone of Interest. This is going to be their second win, right?
yeah, and given that they gave it the award for best British film, then it's not surprising they also gave it best movie not in the English language, because they're already geared towards it. But again, like we said, I think it's a great art film, or whether it would be a much better art film if it was shorter. But again, I haven't seen Society of the Snow, but everything I've been hearing about it, I would expect that it probably would be the front runner for that. So I'm kind of surprised. Then again, Society of the Snow didn't really get released to the public until like January, so maybe a lot of people didn't see it. But we'll see. I don't have Netflix anymore, but maybe if I get it again, I'll definitely check it out.
Was it always on Netflix, or was it ever in the theater?
They they had to put it in the theaters to qualify for awards, but it didn't release anywhere near here, and I don't know when it would have released. So I know they were having certain specialty screenings in Southern California, invitation only type things back in November or whatever, but I don't know when the official release date was theatrically. But I just know it didn't come out anywhere near my region. So maybe it'll get a Blu-ray release or 4K release like All Quiet on the Western Front did, in which case I'd probably pick it up, because yeah, Netflix is too expensive nowadays for me.
Well, it certainly has changed its price, so that I certainly understand, and don't fault you for. I think if one thing that has happened in 2023 is the millions of people who stopped subscribing to streaming services. I myself am subscribed to very few streaming services, and and that's just the way it is, and I'm fine with it. I don't have a problem with it. And ironically, we're the next category is best documentary. Of course, 20 Days in Maripol is nominated. American Symphony, which is a movie, a documentary about a man who's making this decides to create a symphony while his wife, unfortunately, is struggling with cancer. Beyond Utopia, a documentary film about human rights in South Korea. And still, the Michael J.
I saw
Fox.
that.
Yeah, how was that?
That was actually quite good. He's talking about how he was kind of. It starts like right when he started finding out that he might have Parkinson's or something's going on, and it does a quick recap of some of his career. But it talks a lot of. It's like one of those nice documentaries where you're more or less just hanging out with him. And I thought that they could have maybe thrown it a little bit more, because I know he's active in charity work and stuff like that. But I thought it was a nice, relaxing kind of movie to watch with somebody who's, of course, very likable, Michael J. Fox. I thought it was pretty well done. So I liked it. But I have not seen the other documentaries on the list. I didn't see 20 Days in Maripol, but I heard that was exceptionally well done, because it's also major current events that's being followed. But I heard that was a good movie. So I can't really speak to what should or shouldn't win, because I've only seen that one film in the category.
Yeah, and just to answer Dino Dinosaur's question about Poor Things, he says, "Is it a must see?" I would say yes. Poor
And I would
Things.
expect with all the wins it's getting at the BAFTAs that it should get a wider release in the UK now. So if you haven't been able to see it, uh, hopefully it'll get a bigger, release so you can go out and see it. And I like it, and it's really great to see that one in the theater too, because just the visuals are just so like wacky.
I agree, Catherine. So please do go and see that Dino Dinosaur. And thanks so much for stopping by. The next category in the list has to do with best documentary, which you and I were already discussing. I'm just getting back to it. There's one there's one documentary on here called Wham, and I have to be honest with you. It was a nice trip down memory lane, but I'm not quite sure whether it should have been
What's it
nominated.
about?
It's about the pop group Wham. The two, George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley,
Oh,
when they had their, like those songs like "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," and stuff like that. "Careless Whisper," I think, was another beautiful song. They made such great pop songs, and it was great to hear about the early days when they first came out. It was wonderful. However, there was a bunch of other documentaries like Beckham's documentary and Bobby Williams, Robert, I think his name is Bobby Williams. He had a documentary out too. Those were not nominated. I don't know why Wham was nominated. It's okay, but I don't think there was anything that necessarily stood out in regards to this documentary. There might be something going on in the UK, since I don't live in the UK, where it might be significant to have nominated that documentary this year, Catherine. So I am going to
well,
say,
there's a lot of, like campaigning involved too. So depending on how hard the people who made it are promoting it also, has something to do with people being aware of it and how accessible it is to the general public and the voters. Because unfortunately, documentary films, as great as they are not as readily accessible. Like good documentaries, not like the random streaming stuff that, professional documentaries are not as easily accessible to people. And so it's kind of a crapshoot as to what's going to get attention to get nominated. You usually have to find them on the festival circuit.
yeah, absolutely, Catherine. And only 1 year, 1 or 2 years were they accessible to honestly everybody, was during the lockdown, when many of these festivals made their circuits available online, and you could watch 20 films right from your home. But that's not really how festivals work. You go and you have to maybe see 2 or 3 films in a day, and it's a journey. You have to physically go there. You normally can't watch a whole bunch of films in the peace and comfort of your home like that. So, it's back to normal now. In order to get access, you have to either hang out in that city while the festival is going and get tickets to all those things. So lucky to those who can. I also want to say Vicster 5001 says Past Lives was my favorite film of last year. I thought it was a beautiful film. Thank you so much, Vicster 5001. We're glad that you enjoyed that film. Um, so for this category of best documentary, um, I don't know which one to really pick, honestly, Catherine. As I said, I feel quite, out of my just I couldn't make a decision, but the winner happened to be 20 Days in Mariupol, which I'm sure you're not surprised by. I can't.
Nothing surprising about that. Everybody's eyes are on it. Things that are more current events related that everybody's aware of is going to get a lot more attention, and it's probably a really good documentary as well. That's gotten exceptional reviews.
Exactly, Catherine, and I am happy for these winners. It is Mesislav, and I'm so sorry, Mesislav, the person who did it, Shuranov and Rainey Aronson Rath. I know I pronounced your names wrong, but I just wanted to congratulate you as well for that. Now, the next category is Best Animated Film, and I think it's really interesting because I did actually have a favorite of what I wanted to win, but I have not seen all of the films in this category. Um, the the nominees are Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, which I did see. And you saw that film, Catherine?
Oh yeah, I have that film. It was fantastic. The animation was stunning for the different, like each different universe has a completely different animation style, and it's like some type of animation never even seen before. And it was on top of that a really great movie.
Yeah, and the film had one of my favorite Spider-Man characters, which is Spider-Punk. I didn't know Spider-Punk was going to be in it, so I was quite surprised when I saw that, and it was mesmerizing seeing the scenes with Spider-Gwen. Am I saying the right thing? Yeah, Spider-Gwen, as she was, as they're flying through the air, and it's just so beautiful. Those styles you're talking about, Catherine, I've never seen them either. I feel like we were really treated to so many different techniques and artistic differences in the film. I think it was a rare treat, and it's not a surprise that the 2018 film, that the one before this one won many awards. It won Oscar for Best Animated Feature. I'm sure that this one, Into the Spider-Verse, is going to be nominated. Across the Spider-Verse, excuse me, is going to be nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, and not a surprise, it's on its list for Best Animated Film here in the BAFTAs. Elemental, I haven't seen that film. Have you?
No, and I've had the opportunity to because I have Disney Plus. I just haven't gotten around to it. But I heard mixed things about it. Some people liked it. Other people are like, oh, okay, so Pixar usually gets nominated.
Yes, Chicken Run, Dawn of the Nugget.
This
It's
has got to be the longest layover between the original and the sequel, because the original was from summer 2000, and now this one, and it's like, okay, 23 years later, I didn't see it. I heard about it, so I can't speak. I can't remember. I don't even know what people thought of it. So obviously they must have thought something of it because it got nominated.
absolutely. And The Boy and the Heron, a Japanese animated fantasy film directed by Hayao Miyazaki, looks incredible, from a book from 1937. Studio Ghibli there, Catherine. Which one do you think won for Best Animated Film?
Probably The Boy and the Heron. That's been just sweeping. Like initially, it would have been probably Across the Spider-Verse because that had a lot of traction and a lot of attention with the crazy animation they're doing. But then when The Boy and the Heron started getting those reviews, and people were, and the fact that they didn't do much of a marketing campaign deliberately. They didn't even put trailers out, and yet it still did well. And people were, because he wanted to keep it really secret as to what it is. And of course, this is Hayao Miyazaki, who's like the best at this at anime, and so I'm not really surprised. I heard it had headier themes. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm not surprised that it won, and probably well deserving as well.
Yeah, certainly. I saw a little bit of The Boy and the Heron over the summer when they were advertising films that were coming to the theater by Studio Ghibli, and they were just bringing in films that were from all different eras of Studio Ghibli, and they never seem to make a bad film. I always look forward to seeing what they do, and The Boy and the Heron, I can't wait to watch it, but I have not seen it, so I'm going to be honest with you. The only one I saw was the Spider-Man film, which I did love. And I'm sure, as Tom Jr. Jackson is showing us, Across the Spider-Verse got different awards. That film will always continue to get awards, I think, no matter what. So I'm not that concerned about the fact that it didn't win the BAFTA. I'm just happy that it won, and will still get attention because the crew that's working on that film is quite a prestigious bunch. And they will continue to do their films no matter what. So, congratulations to the Boy and the Heron for that win. The next category, Best Adapted Screenplay. Um, yeah, this one is very interesting, and I'm just one second. I'm typing while I'm talking, and it's difficult. They've got 5 nominees, Catherine. Of course, Oppenheimer is on the list because it's from that book,
That's
American.
an interesting one because, okay, yes, it's based on a biography, and I know that biography reproduces verbatim all of the dialogue from that was recorded from that backroom security hearing in 1954. Because in the movie, you see the guy in the corner typing on his typewriter, and he's recording all the notes. And Nolan literally took so everything they say in those scenes is exact dialogue, but the rest of it is like historical stuff, and so it's like I guess that makes it count as an adapted screenplay because it's a true story, but how much of it are they pulling from the biography versus from real events? And so I guess that's how because the other 4 are adapted from novels. Which is interesting because, The Zone of Interest is adapted from a novel, but that too is more like a very artsy type interpretation of a novel. And then Poor Things was, of course, a novel, an American fiction. And then All of Us Strangers apparently got adapted in a Japanese film and from 1988 even. Uh, but I can't, I can't speak to All of Us Strangers as I haven't seen it. But Poor Things, American Fiction, Oppenheimer, Zone of Interest. Like for me, I would say American. I haven't, but then again, I haven't read the original book, so I can't say whether it's an accurate, proper adaptation or not. But and certainly in terms of whether or not it connected. I mean, all these films clearly connected with people. But having not read any of the original works, I can't really say which one would be deserving because it's not so much that you're awarding the movie you like the most, but you're comparing it to what is the best reflection or interpretation of the original work. So I can't really pick, but I do see that this is the first award that American Fiction is up for tonight through and that was a great movie.
It was a great film, and such a treat. Certainly, I think you and I both enjoyed that film. I think it really was an exciting film to see that lead actor perform, and knowing that Jeffrey Wright could always perform this way, but we hadn't ever had a chance to see him like this. Something that's really interesting about Oppenheimer and its adaptation is that the original book has so much material that it's impossible to recreate even a fraction of what's in there. And so you really have to pick and choose the highlights that you want. And anybody can go ahead and make another Oppenheimer tomorrow and come up with a completely different film, maybe even as good as the one that we got. So it is really interesting. You know, you're pulling from maybe one of the best biographies ever written. It's impossible for you to kind of mess it up. So however, there was so much material, it's hard to say, how well it is or isn't adapted. It was just so much material in that book as far as I'm concerned. It's difficult to make a decision, as to the best adaptation. So, I'm happy for American Fiction, which ended up winning, and I'm happy that it won this, but I didn't read the original, book, or anything like that, so I don't know for that one, whether or not it's the best choice in my opinion, but I'm just happy American Fiction won. I thought it was a fantastic screenplay, Catherine.
It was.
Yeah,
Yeah, we both really enjoyed it when we reviewed it. So yeah, that's a good one.
yeah. And the next category is best original screenplay. I know you were talking to me about some of the choices here, and you had some questions because I think one of them you were saying you weren't quite sure why they had one of the items or one of the choices on the list. Maybe it's Barbie was the one that you were.
Well, no, that one made sense to me for an original screenplay because the one I commented on a minute ago is adapted. Like, why is Oppenheimer, or why? Because that one's kind of like, how much of it are you taking from the biography? Because most of it obviously is made up stuff. But with original, it's surprising that the BAFTAs call Barbie an original screenplay, but the Oscars don't, because the Oscars call it adapted. And it's like, well, it seems like Barbie is an original screenplay because, yeah, it's a pre-existing IP, but it's not adapting a pre-existing story. They made the whole thing up. So that makes more sense for that to be in this category. Whereas, I mean, Past Lives, no. Maestro, definitely not. uh, Anatomy of a Fall, you and I both were not as impressed with that movie as everybody else was, even though it's been getting a lot of attention. So for me, I would put it between Barbie and The Holdovers because, I mean, yeah, Barbie has those things where the fourth wall breaking speech sometimes is a bit much, where you're like summing up the movie. Like, come on, trust your audience to be smarter to figure things out. Holdovers, I think, is a nice throwback to those old 70s like dramas, and I really liked that script as far as original scripts go. So I would have probably picked that one.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Catherine, in regards to the holdovers. I think that that definitely should have been the winner in this category. I think that it had a lot of incredible non-narrative parts to it that I enjoyed immensely, as well. That I don't necessarily can say about some of the other movies, especially Anatomy of a Fall and Past Lives were not my favorites. Maestro, I'm not quite sure what we got from that film, but you know, the winner on this was Anatomy of a Fall, and you know, it was a huge win. They got the Palme d'Or for this, and I'm almost wondering whether it was kind of loosely based on some kind of case. that might have happened in Europe. Who knows? Sometimes that can happen, and it can resonate locally with so many people. So it wasn't one of my favorites, but it did win for Best Original Screenplay in this category. I also wanted to mention in the previous category of Best Adapted Screenplay, it was Cord Jefferson who wrote the screenplay. I didn't mention that. Cord Jefferson, congratulations. And for Best Original Screenplay for Anatomy of the Fall, it's Justine Triet and Arthur Harari for that one. So congratulations to them for that win. Um, and oh, we're coming down to the wire, Catherine. The next six ones here for Best Actress in a Supporting Role, Catherine. Oh, I'm so excited. Oops. Let me change that first. Best Actress in a Supporting Role. Um, I'm sorry. Now I know how they feel when they're doing this in the like on the show. Maybe they pre-type everything, who knows, in a supporting role. We have a number of nominees here for Best Actress. Um, Rosamund Pike in Saltburn, Sandra Hüller for Zone of Interest, Claire Foy for All of Us Strangers, Danielle Brooks in The Color Purple, Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer, and Davine Joy Randolph in The Holdovers. And Catherine, I remember you talking about Danielle Brooks as possibly winning this category.
Yeah, she was excellent in The Color Purple. She was a real standout. I'm surprised that Sandra Hüller is considered a supporting in Zone of Interest. She seemed more or less to me to be the lead role, but I guess they just didn't consider it that way. Whereas, I mean, Rosamund Pike and Saltburn, okay, she was okay. I'm like, okay, that's a surprise nomination. Haven't seen All of Us Strangers, so I can't speak to Claire Foy, but Emily Blunt is always great, and she was good in this as well, but she didn't have as much there. Whereas I think that it was going to be between Danielle Brooks or Davine Joy for those two films.
Yeah, absolutely. Catherine, I didn't see The Color Purple performance, although you've said, and a lot of people have said how outstanding the performances are, especially for Danielle Brooks. And it's a musical, right?
Yeah, and it just dropped on Max too. If you have that HBO Max, so you could see it there. But she was really, really good in that movie. It's like, wow.
Oh my gosh, then I better check it out, Catherine. From what you're saying, it's something to think about there. And I certainly will do that. JH Edit says American Fiction was fire. Glad you like that. Certainly something to think about. And hello to Irene Jobson. There, just saying hello to everybody. So let's see what happens here. Thank you, Tom Jr. Jackson, as you said, Catherine. It is now streaming and available. So the winner for Best Actress in a Supporting Role did go to Davine Joy Randolph, and of course in her role in The Holdovers. And I'm very happy for her in this. I think it does. She certainly had a stellar performance in this, and I enjoyed it immensely. There's very little I didn't enjoy in The Holdovers. Very happy for her success. What do you think, Catherine?
Yeah, she's been winning all the awards this year. For me, I might have leaned towards Danielle Brooks because she was just really good in that movie too. But yeah, definitely well deserved.
Yes, and certainly, it's so happy for her, and such a well done job there. So let's look at the best actor in a supporting role, and of course, the nominees here include um, Dominic Sessa for The Holdovers. That's the is he the character who
Yeah,
is the young man?
yeah, he's the main guy, Agnes Tully, and that first time actor, and I think it is a worthy, pretty good nomination. I was surprised that they actually because none of the I'm not sure if he got a nomination for the SAG Awards or not, but it's like I think it is a well deserved nomination. I was surprised in a good way that it made the list.
Yeah, I think he does deserve it as well. I think he showed an incredible amount of maturity and responsibility in this really outstanding performance. Robert Downey Jr., of course, is Louis Strauss in Oppenheimer. Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon as Hale. Jacob Elordi as Saltburn as Felix Catton. Ryan Gosling as Ken. and Paul Mescal, All of Us Strangers. The only performance that I didn't see, once again, just like you, was All of Us Strangers. I was convinced personally that Robert Downey Jr. was going to get this anyway. It just feels as if there's this momentum around him playing this role, Catherine. Even with this outstanding nomination for Dominic Sessa, who certainly does deserve this recognition. Who do you think won in this category?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised that Ryan Gosling and Jacob Elordi got nominated because, I mean, yeah, Barbie's popular. It's got a lot of steam, but like best supporting for Ryan Gosling. I mean, he was funny, but no, I didn't think that. And then Jacob Elordi, he's fine in Saltburn, but best support, it's like, really? I don't know. It feels like they're trying to fill out the roster because they have 6 nominees in these 2 categories. But to me, it was going to be a 2-horse race between Robert De Niro, who gave the best performance I've seen in well over a decade, because I haven't seen him do very well in much of anything for a long time. He was really great as William Hale, again, playing a real person, just like Robert Downey Jr. did. And then whereas Robert Downey Jr., I think, would be the winner for Louis Strauss. It was so good, and it's great to finally see him play a role that's not just the comic book, like something different for a change. And I just read an article where he was interviewed, and he was saying how happy he was that Chris gave him a call, because he was starting to wonder, because the couple projects that were not Marvel related that he did during his Marvel tenure didn't do very well. And it's like, are people going to forget that this guy used to be really good? And how happy he was that Chris Nolan gave him that chance. And I think that this is going to, I hope that I think he should win this one in all of the awards ceremonies. He was so good.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Catherine. He really shined in this film against a lot of very well-known actors and great performances. Robert Downey Jr. kept it together even when he was on the hot seat. The character was in the hot seat with Robbie Malek calling him out. I enjoyed it. It was a nice, playful kind of back and forth between those two. And it was really, I think, maybe Robert Downey Jr.'s best performance we've seen in the last 10 years. And I do have to give him credit for having outstanding performances pretty much all the time, but this one really struck a chord into his ability to play dramatic roles of historical figures as well. And congratulations to him. I had it here. He did win Best Supporting Actor in a Supporting Role. Robert Downey Jr., a well-deserved BAFTA win for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. We certainly are very happy. Congratulations to him for that. Also want to thank Lugnut6, who says, and the BAFTA for the most gorgeous and lovely, dreamy diamond hosts of the world go to RM and Kat. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lugnut6.
That is so kind. We appreciate that. We appreciate all of you here.
And you get the award for like the most adorable dog in your profile picture, because he's got the big sunglasses on. That's so cool.
Isn't he cute? Just sitting back and relaxing. I love that adorableness. Lugnuts, you certainly know how to put a smile on our faces. And also here, Irene says, special hello to the spectacular Cat. Always a great day when I get the pleasure to see and hear her.
Oh, hey, Irene. Yeah, it's been a while. Nice to see you.
Mm-hmm. So thank you all for the kind words. We so appreciate everything there. We really do. So let's continue with the next category, everybody. The next category has to do with Best Actress in a Leading Role. Best Actress, everybody. Certainly a very interesting list here. I'm trying to type fast enough. In a leading role. I can do this.
This is another category where one of the nominees for the movie Rye Lane, I haven't seen it, hadn't even heard of it until we started broadcasting, so I can't speak to that nomination one way or another. I can speak to seeing Fantasia Barrino in Color Purple. I mean, it's inevitable. People are going to make comparisons to the original. I think Whoopi Goldberg was much better because, this is a musical. It's not really, I mean, it has dramatic moments, but because it's a musical, I just found that a lot of the supporting, that because of the tone, it doesn't allow that lead performance to excel as much as it otherwise could have. But the supporting roles like Danielle Brooks and Regina Hall, or not Regina Hall. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but like they were a lot better. So that was kind of a surprise nomination there. Some of the other ones, not as surprising. Let's see, who else did they nominate in this category? Margot Robbie as Barbie. Yeah, that's another one where it's like, okay, I liked it. She's perfectly cast as Barbie, but I don't know if I'd say that that's the best leading role. Maybe Carey Mulligan was really good in Maestro. She's like the only thing I liked in that movie. She was really good, but we expect her to be. Sandra Huller for Anatomy of a Fall. It's like, yeah, she was well cast for that story, but I didn't really see it. And then, I mean, I didn't really picture that winning. And then Emma Stone, which is, in a sense, I didn't really know who the front runner was going to be for this season, but then Emma's just been winning like everything from Poor Things. So I would probably, in that list, pick Emma Stone.
Yeah, I agree, Catherine. And Emma Stone was the winner for Best Actress in a Leading Role. Not a surprise for Poor Things.
Oh, I'm surprised though that Lily Gladstone didn't get nominated.
Yeah, I wonder.
I think this is the one award show that she didn't get the nominee for, but she got nominated everywhere else.
Yeah, I am wondering that too. Once again, Sandra Huller, who's having a stellar year, having 2 films that were nominated, being nominated for Best Actress in the Role. Obviously, one or two of her films have already won awards, so she's coming out on top anyway. But they didn't resonate with me, but they might have resonated in Europe for a number of reasons. As I said, there might have been some famous court case or something that it resonated there. And of course, one other thing too is that their legal system is different, and there might be something about what's happening in that film that resonates more to people who understand their legal system. I don't, so I get it very clearly. um Carey Mulligan's performance in Maestro was spectacular, and
Mm-hmm.
she's the only other person that I feel, really deserves to be nominated here against Emma. However, um as far as I'm concerned, the disjointedness of Maestro kind of let Carrie down a little bit. Whereas in Emma Stone's role as Bella, this film really did feature her in such a beautiful way, even for the parts I didn't like at the end, where she's in the, something I don't want to spoil for people, where at the end of the film where I didn't care for what happened. It didn't matter because the rest of it was so stellar. Sometimes when a film, extends and has such a high level of excellence, even if there is an element in the film that you don't care for, you can just accept it and go on and still enjoy it. I think it says a lot when the quality of a film is just really of such a great standard that it does not matter. There might be elements you don't care for, but Emma Stone's performance throughout the entire film, I felt, was remarkable. I think she worked so hard on this, and it does come through in this character. She's completely devoted to the Bella character, who really was remarkable, and she deserved that. Now, in regards to this Margot Robbie nomination, I think that was put in there, as you said, maybe Catherine, just to round out the numbers or something, because that wasn't quite, what I thought we would see into that. If there was a best comedy, area, I think that could have gotten that because she
Yeah, I
was.
feel that people keep conflating popularity with being the best. Like all the outrage that people had about, oh, how could Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie not get nominated? I'm like, well, it's a popular movie, sure, and it's funny, but does that mean it's the best? Well, not necessarily, and, and so, and I feel kind of the same way, like I mentioned in the previous category, supporting actor. It's like Ryan Gosling and Jacob Elordi. It's like, what? It's like, okay. And then we'll go over for the ones in this next category that we get to as well.
Well, what's interesting about the Ryan Gosling nomination is that he had a #1 hit in the UK, I believe, for I'm Just Ken. And some of that popularity might be another reason why he was nominated. Um, Perhaps he could have been nominated for Best Musical Performance if there is one for the BAFTAs. I don't know. But I could see how his character could have been nominated at least for that. So, you know, if we're looking at it from that point of view, as well. And so let's go ahead and look at the best actor in a leading role. And certainly there are a lot of very interesting nominees here. You know, obviously Cillian Murphy for Oppenheimer, Bradley Cooper for his passion project Maestro, Coleman Domingo as Rustin. I know who Bayard Rustin is, but I didn't see this version
I
of.
watched it. He was. I'll put it this way: he was much better than the movie deserved, because this is like one of those movies where I call them like magazine movies, where you read an article about a historical event that takes you like 15 minutes to read it in a magazine, and the movie, it's like longer, but you don't get anything else out of the movie that you didn't get out of the article. It's like, it's fine. And he was, again, really good, much better than the movie probably deserved. Nice to see him get nominated. Is he the best of the year against the others? Yeah, he's pretty good, and I think it's worth acknowledging that. I think it's still a well deserved nomination from him, even though it's surprising because, I mean, yeah, Netflix, a lot of people have access to it, but I didn't hear any buzz about this movie. Like, even people who saw it said, "Oh yeah, he was really good," but I didn't hear a ton of people raving about it. So maybe they did a big campaign behind the scenes or something to. But he is really good in that movie, though.
That's very interesting, and I like, him as an actor. I think he's very talented. Certainly, he will get more roles, Coleman Domingo, that he deserves. And Paul Giamatti, one of our favorites, not a surprise, nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role as well. Barry Keoghan for Saltburn here, as you mentioned, Catherine.
I mean, he was good, but it's like, you kind of expect Barry to play these quirky, kind of odd characters, and he's kind of just doing a lot of that same thing again. And I feel that there's a lot of shock value involved with some of the things that he's doing. It was a good performance. Um, this is like, I think, the only award show that he got nominated for that I'm aware of. So okay.
Yeah, and T.O. for Past Lives, a film. You know, of course, he's the lead in that film. A
Yeah, I
film.
thought he was pretty good. I mean, I not like you and I said, the movie didn't really connect with us because they didn't really sell us on that relationship and the weirdness of the time jumps and all of that. But I think he was still pretty good in the film.
Absolutely, Catherine. And not a surprise here that the win goes to Cillian Murphy, one that I think all of us would have been able to bet the house on, for the win here. Certainly, Cillian Murphy just did such a great performance in this film, and I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed everything I've seen him in.
Yeah, I think the rest of the award season, it's a two-horse race between Killian and Paul Giamatti. Because people joked that, and I joked too, that Paul's character in The Holdovers is like the same character he played in Sideways, but he didn't get nominated for Sideways for a performance, which was notable back then. And so, he's got pull with American audiences and people really liking him. So that could make him, give him a bit of an edge come the Oscars next month, but we'll see. But yeah, Cillian Murphy, also well deserving. Great job.
Yeah, I kind of like that Giamatti does have hold with the audience here. He certainly does such a beautiful job in so many different roles. And this holdover role, this professor, is just absolutely wonderful. I think delivered so well by him. But congratulations to Cillian Murphy, who none of us are surprised got this one, with such an outstanding performance. So let's go ahead and look at the last two categories, at least that we're covering here. Category for Best Director. And let's go ahead and look at the nominees here, for this particular choice. We have Bradley Cooper for Maestro. His first time out. Is this his first time out getting a Best Director nomination?
I think so, because usually gets the nominations as a producer. So probably his first. I can't, or maybe did he get one for Star Is Born because he directed that, didn't he?
I don't remember. I'm
He might
sorry. I should be able to see it here, but it's not telling me. But yeah, it is very interesting. It says that he yeah, I don't know if he has been nominated in this category before, but what I am going to say is good for him. I'm happy for him. Jonathan Glazer for Zone of Interest, not a surprise. There, a film that has been getting so much attention. Andrew Haig for All of Us Strangers. Alexander Payne for The Holdovers. one of the best scripts I've seen, honestly, as and obviously best direction as far as I'm concerned. And Justine Treat for Anatomy of a Fall. Not a surprise here, Catherine. My pick of all of them, it would be for me between The Holdovers and Oppenheimer. What about you? Who do you think it would be between?
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
That to me, that's an easy pick for this year. That was just a very well directed movie. I'm surprised though that for all the other buzz it's been getting, that Scorsese didn't get a nomination for Killers of the Flower Moon, because I thought that was actually well directed as well. I certainly would have nominated Scorsese over Justine Triet, because again, Anatomy of a Fall, you and I talked about it. It's like it's not really connecting with us. It's kind of obvious what's going on from the get go, and then it's like you just gotta wait to kind of sit through it. I haven't seen All of Us Strangers. Again, I always repeat that because I can't speak to whether he got the Zone of Interest. Again, I think because it's such a unique art film that's getting a lot of attention, even though I would not have picked that for necessarily best director either. And then Maestro is like, just again, no, unless, okay, directing Carey Mulligan, who did a great performance. Okay, there's that. But to me, this is an easy win for Nolan.
Yeah, not a surprise here for the win. And as many shows as I see him talking about his film, he's surprisingly humble, Catherine. I'm still a little surprised at that.
And another thing you notice is that Yorgos Lanthimos, who directed Poor Things, was not nominated either. And yet
And he
Emma
should
Stone
have
got Best
been.
Actress, and you're directing your actors. It got all these other wins, and it's not even a nomination in the screenwriting, so they're loving it. And the cinematography got nominated, but they didn't nominate the director, so that's kind of interesting.
It is very interesting and confusing. Certainly there was room for more nominations there. But when we go to best film here, Catherine, for the BAFTAs,
Oh,
I
look at this! They nominated 6 directors, but only nominated 5 for Best Picture. That's interesting.
that is very interesting. Certainly looking at the list for best film. Um, as far as I'm concerned, quite a few of the nominations do deserve the nomination. Maybe one, Anatomy of the Fall, I don't think should be on there. But as far as I'm concerned, Oppenheimer, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Poor Things, all I think are contenders for best movie. As you know, what do you think, Catherine?
Amongst those nominees, it would be in order for me. It would be Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, or excuse me, Oppenheimer, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Poor Things, and then Anatomy of a Fall. That's the way I would rank them. Because again, Killers of the Flower Moon is a really good movie, but then it kind of starts falling apart in the hour and the ending. At least for me, where immersion is broken and stuff like that. Whereas Holdovers is just a really good, nice throwback. But Oppenheimer for me was best because that's like it's a 3-hour movie, but it doesn't feel like 3 hours. It gets you to your seemingly climactic point and reels you back in, and you're not even missing a beat. And I saw it like 8 times. It's like it's a great film, and I hope they're taking notes to make more films about that don't have to be these big blockbuster extravaganzas. If they don't even want to get the top tier actors, there's still plenty of great actors they can get, which would be even cheaper. And if it's not, assuming it's not a period piece, you can do all kinds of movies like this. Just because no one likes to edit things non-linearly to create more drama doesn't mean he's the only one allowed to do it. Other people could pick up on that and try and make more engaging films. And I think if you took movies that for the most part are just the same rote dramas over and over again, and then did what Nolan does with it, like edit them out of order and stuff, it would just make it infinitely more interesting. and so that's why I picked Oppenheimer would be my easy pick for Best Picture for this year.
Yeah, and Tom June Jackson says Giamatti was in the movie Singles. I think it was a small part in it, but he was in it. Thanks, Tom, for sharing that with us. And guys, of course, not a surprise. Best film goes to Oppenheimer. Not a surprise there. I think Oppenheimer really has shown us what reviving the excitement in of let's say actual film, uh, printed film can bring back to cinema, and really just showing a historical figure in such an elated way. And, there's a lot to really digest in this, I think, for a film that's almost 3 hours. It's been such a victory. This, as far as I'm concerned, Catherine, as I said before, this film has way surpassed the $1 billion range because it's a 3-hour film. Less shows per screen. The film, people have been wanting to see it in 70 millimeter. We don't see that all the time. You know something? The films that people want to see in 70 millimeter are things like 2001 Space Odyssey, classic films. This film almost became an instant classic. I am
They
just so
extended the IMAX 70 millimeter screening in my theater for like a month and a half because they were selling out like crazy, and it was just like, oh, cool, let's just keep printing, keep putting the show times down. It was crazy.
It really was, Catherine, and I think what we're seeing is just Christopher Nolan being able to create such a classic film that is not going to be leaving the cinema anytime soon. I think it's going to be in the theater for 2024, going on strong, even with the demands for physical media not being able to meet that over the Christmas holiday. I think it might be one of the most highest selling physical media copies, let's say by the end of 2024, Catherine. That's what I predict for Oppenheimer. And I also think it's great, just seeing these historical dramas come to life. But I also want to say it's also a victory for The Holdovers, a film that I think a lot of people did not think was going to resonate. Boy, it sure obviously resonated because it got nominated in so many categories, Catherine. And I think it's a success regardless as to whether what happens with The Holdovers. Certainly, the nominations do speak volumes. Many of the people who we've seen in these nominations tonight did win in other awards categories, in other award ceremonies. So it does seem like there's quite a lot of dispersal in addition to the big winners like Oppenheimer here. So that was also very satisfying. Catherine, any final thoughts? Any
I honestly think that John Wick Chapter 4 should have been nominated in plenty of categories: production design, editing, even like if a movie doesn't convince you to create a stunt category, that one would be the one to do it, and they still haven't done it, so it's probably never going to happen. And ironically, that's the only film from last year I had zero complaints about. That is my favorite. That's actually my favorite film of last year. It's my number one movie. Was John Wick Chapter 4.
Nice.
But given all the ones they're nominating after that would be Oppenheimer and so on. But I do think that there were a few awards that would be legit, should have been a legit contender for.
Yeah, and why there's no action category or comedy category or art film category, some very specific things that we're seeing that need to have separate categories as far as I'm concerned. A few years ago we had an animated documentary, I guess you would call it, and that had to be pushed into the animated film section. And we need to expand some of these categories as far as I'm concerned, because we're getting things that are so extraordinary here.
Well, the thing
There
about
was
animated is that there's no reason to really shove it into its own separate categories. There's a lot of like The Boy and the Heron is like a drama. It's not like just because it's cartoon doesn't mean it's kid friendly. And there's been a strong bias against animated films for a long time. And when they finally created that category, it was almost like, oh, we're going to create a consolation prize category because we don't like the idea that, that one year Beauty and the Beast was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture. In a year where admittedly there wasn't much competition. I didn't think 91 had a lot of great nominees necessarily, but that's something which doesn't like it because it's not restrictive to a particular genre. Let's say it's like, yes, it's certainly animation is a product. It's like an aesthetic, but it's not a genre. I think you could nominate plenty in the Best Picture category, like The Boy and the Heron, over some of those for sure, from what everybody's been saying about it. But then other categories, it's like, well, Best Action. It's like, well, then it becomes like a popularity contest at one point or at some point. But I think there'd be something to say about that.
Yeah, it's something to think about going forward. And it's been so much fun looking at this wrap up, Catherine. A lot easier than trying to do this live, which would have been very difficult for us because we didn't have that broadcast. But Catherine, I want to thank you for joining me tonight and looking at the BAFTA award wins. It's so exciting. Catherine, where can people find you?
You can find me at Slice Night at Letterboxd, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter, or X, or whatever they're calling it now. You can also find me on the Fantasmagorium Show YouTube channel. Got a lot of videos there of previous reviews for other films of the various franchises: Bond, Batman, Spider-Man, Tarantino, Rodriguez. Right now, Scott and I are reviewing the Fargo shows, so check us out. We're usually on Thursday nights at 7 Pacific. And then you can also find me on the Virtual Cantina Network every second and fourth Sunday of the month at 8 a.m. hosting Unifying Force, which is like a Star Wars talk show where we relate real world philosophy to Star Wars, and it's a fun show as well.
Well, thank you, Catherine. Guys, please do check out Catherine at all of those locations. Certainly do subscribe to the Burnettwork and to Positive Fandom, everybody, and to my new channel, Roman Empire Matters. You can find me on all three of those. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight, especially Tom Jr. Jackson, our moderator, collaborator, and good friend. Tom Jr. Jackson, we are all goof people. And thank you, everybody, for spending the time to hang out with us and talk about these winners. Certainly, guys, Catherine and I are going to be back for the Oscars. I can't wait to see who's going to win those awards, Catherine. But I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And what a fun time, guys. And remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, always remember to please be kind, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Bye.